you know, uh, trade the different games items, right, with each other on this platform, right? And also in this platform, basically the whenever the user do some payments, right, then its record automatically updated, right? And if one of the transaction is fail, then your system will be capable to do rollback. What does it mean by rollback? So rollback means if any transaction that failed, then it must be come back to its previous position, right? It is same
Mhm.
like a bank, right? Let's suppose during the ATM transaction, if your one of the transaction failed,
Mhm.
that means this transaction is not completed, so your money from the bank is not deducted, right? So
Mhm.
it comes if it is possibly deducted, then it automatically comes into your bank account after 1 to 2 hours, right? So
Mhm.
this type of the transaction is basically rollback transaction, right? So
Mhm.
currently he says if you have a gaming website and different users are basically trading on this platform, right? Means trading the games on this platform, right? Or maybe gaming items.
Mhm.
And if one of the transaction is failed, then your system must be capable to do rollback, right? Now he's asking which AWS service provide this type of the capability, right? Means can our transaction are automatically rollback if one of the transaction failed, right? So basically the different users record are saved where, our app,
Um,
yeah.
I mean the database.
Yes, definitely. So
So
we need to select a best database which provide us the facility of rollback, right? Means if any of the user transaction fail, then it automatically roll back to the previous, right?
mhm.
So which service is the most suitable for this, right? So our first option is Amazon DynamoDB with operation made with consistent read parameter set. Okay, so Amazon DynamoDB is one of the AWS database, right? And it is a NoSQL database. So what does it mean by NoSQL database? So NoSQL database means there is no table form to store the data, right? So Amazon DynamoDB is basically store the data in the form of, we can say in the form of records, right? Or in something like that, right? And it says we should focus on the consistent read to set to true. What does it mean? So consistent read, the parameter true means, let's suppose you have a database, right? And if one of the users want to see some record in the database, so that they can ask for the consistent read, right? So could you please tell me that in that scenario, uh, did the consistent read help us?
Did the consistent read?
Helped us means consistent read means let's suppose you have a database and most of the people asking for some of the information to display in their screens, right? So
Mhm.
read means just get the data from the database, right? So
Mhm.
read means just getting out the data from database. So could you please tell me that in that scenario in which we have to do update the transaction record if the transaction is failed, then the consistent read helped us or not, right? So definitely it doesn't help us because the transaction, whenever the transaction is failed, so basically it updated on the back end of the database and write the some transaction in it, right? Store
Mhm.
some records in it, right? So in that case, we doesn't need any of consistent read, right? And if we
What
can
does
talk about
consistent read mean again? Explain that again one more time.
consistent read means anytime your database user, right, are sending requests again and again to fetch from your data in from database, right? Means let's suppose if I am in the ATM, right, and I did some transaction, right, money transaction, and this record is basically comes from backend database, right? So basically in that case the user actually read the data, right? which already placed in the our database, and whenever the use asks for the data, it comes from the database to the in the screen display, right? So this is basically the consistent read parameter, right?
Okay.
And DynamoDB is basically NoSQL database. So you have to remember that whenever this type of the MCQs comes, like in which you have to do a rollback transaction, right? Or increasing the writing speed, something like that. So in that case, you must have to use a some serverless databases, right? And serverless one DynamoDB is one of the serverless database, right? Means NoSQL database, right? And the second one is also service of AWS, right? Which is Amazon Elastic Cache, right? And it is basically the SQL database provided by the just helped us to cache our record. What does it mean by cache? Do you know what is cache means?
Yeah, cache means to hide,
No,
to archive.
cache. Yeah, caching. Let's suppose I have a database, right? And my most of the users are read the data from my database, right? Let's suppose if user asks the same query again and again, and the database give this query to specifically this user again and again, then it definitely takes a lot of time, right? So
Mhm.
what we can attach between the user and database, we attach some cache, right? Either we can attach elastic cache or either we can attach a meme cache, right? So this is also an AWS services, right? That basically provide us help to cache the data. What does it mean by cache the data? Cache the data means store the data in some temporary space, right? And whenever the user asks the same query, just give him immediately, right? Instead of picking up from original database and then comes to the user, it immediately comes from some elastic cache or maybe beam cache, right? So cache is basically speed up the process, and cache is basically speed up the whole transaction process, we can say, right? So now you have to tell me that according to this scenario, could this option help us to attach some elastic cache or mem cache? So basically, attaching the elastic cache or mem cache is only helped us to speed up the record. So could you please tell me that for this scenario, is it related to some speed? Just
Um,
thinking about it. So you can read the question again, so you can easily, verify either we use this option or not. Could you please explain me the this question again?
yeah, I understand the question. A gaming
Hmm.
website gives users the ability to trade game items with each other on the platform. Okay.
Right.
The
Mm-hmm.
platform requires both users' records to be updated
Hmm.
and persisted in one transaction, meaning each transaction, like both players, player A and player B, made a transaction. Their records of what happened needs to be persisted, means maintained consistently, perpetually,
Yes. Right.
in one transaction. So transaction between players A and B
Mhm.
from perhaps different servers that they're using, I guess, or whatever.
So simple is that if one of the transaction is failed for some certain reason, right? So then it transaction must be rolled back and its record must not be saved in database, right? So as we discussed, the elastic cache or some caches memories or cache database is only used to speed up the process, right? So in this
Yeah, it
question,
saves the record basically. Cache means hidden. The word
no,
cache means hidden.
not a cache doesn't means hidden. Cache means a space where we store the some data and that serves the user data immediately, right? So that's the whole thing means, right?
Yeah,
Cache,
that's what I'm
right?
saying. Is like your cache. the way the reason it's called cache is
Hmm.
because it's hidden from view, and but it's
Yeah.
stored so it can be fetched when needed. That's what
Yeah, we
cache
can
means
say
in
that. We
English.
can say that. Yeah. So currently, if we can reading the question, we didn't any have a question related to speed, right? We don't want to increase the, speed of the user or speed of the records, right? So currently we
Mhm.
are discussing about some transactions rollback, right? So that's why we skip this option. Now comes to the third one. We will use the Amazon DynamoDB with the read
Okay,
and
okay,
write.
wait. We skipped
Yeah,
the
yeah.
second one because of speed. Where does the second op answer talk about speed?
Actually, we skip this because in our question, we didn't have any related question to speed, right? Because Elastic Cache is only attached with those databases that has some speed problems, right? So if our question is related to something like a speed, like if user want to experience a good speed, or if our user wants to, we can say update the record in a very fast speed, then we can use this Elastic Cache or Meme Cache, right? But our question is not related to something like a speed, so that's why we skip this option to second one, B1, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
because our question says we have to update the record, and this record must be rolled back if one of the transaction is failed, right? That means the right query means the right transaction must be rolled back in any case if one of the transaction is failed, right? So
Yeah.
if we can read the third one, Amazon DynamoDB with read and write made by transaction operation. So what does it mean? So it means if we can use the Amazon DynamoDB for it, right? That have read and write both access, right? And by
Mm-hmm.
using the transaction static, what does it mean by transaction static operation? So transaction static means all the transaction operation, right? And what does
Mm-hmm.
it mean by all transaction operations? So in every transaction, we have a some set of operations. Like, could you please give me example? In one set of transaction operation, what type of the operations are involved in it? Like,
Mm-hmm.
first of all, when you enter the card, right? And when you enter the card, it is processing by machine, right? And once it process, it basically matches your sum of the barcode, your card barcode, and matches with the backend database. If it is matches, then it will asking for you pin, right? And once you
Mm-hmm.
enter the pin, then it again matches this data with the backend, right? So this type of the operation are basically the transaction operation, right? So he says we can use the Amazon DynamoDB that have read and write operation for the transaction operation, right? So this is basically the correct option because we need a some transaction operation for it. For example, if our some of the transaction failed, then what should we do? We basically roll back the transaction, and for the rollback the transaction we need to use some transaction operation or transaction queries that is basically helped in Amazon DynamoDB, right? Which is NoSQL database, that really fast database for read and write operations, right? So that's why these options are most suitable for our question, right?
So which one
But
is the
but
answer?
so according to this, the C is the most appropriate, right? We discussed the first two that doesn't have any sense related to the question, right? Now we can discuss the fourth one. So C is basically more suitable, but we need to discuss about the D and E, right? So if we can discuss the D, Amazon Aurora, so this is basically a MySQL database. So whenever the question comes related to some transaction operation, write operation, so you can easily skip the SQL databases, right? MySQL databases that is related to tables in which data is stored in the form of tables, rows, and columns, right? So we can skip easily. Why? Because this is the SQL database that stores the data in the form of rows and tables, right? And it doesn't have any a good query result or good transaction processes, right? So whenever you see the MySQL databases related to some transactions question, you can easily skip this option, right? And if we can talk about Amazon Athena, so Amazon Athena is not a database service, right? It is a data service, right? That basically actually used to process our data, or made some, run some queries on it, right? So it is not a database. So E is definitely get rid of from this option, right?
And is there
So
any way that I can engage with this content in a more practical way? Because reading
so
each of these
yeah.
without like having any idea of what these things are, I think it'll be very
Ra-
difficult for me to like
Ravi, yeah.
remember
So
these.
let me tell you one thing. So in this question, we have one, two, three, five services are included, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Amazon DynamoDB is one of the AWS service. Elasticcache is also AWS service, and each service has a really, really more components, right?
Mm.
So we can spend each lecture on every database, if we can if we want to understand fully in a practical form this question, that we need to do the understanding related to Amazon DynamoDB Elasticcache practically, right? And
Mm.
we need to spend the one lecture for every database for it,
And they
and
have many
also,
databases basically, right?
yeah, definitely. And if we spend a one lecture on one
Mm.
MCQs, then it is not possible to do the 443 question, because every question has a different services. Like in this case, you see the AWS SDK. It is a proper 4 to 5 lecture of series in it, right? AWS SDK. So this is something like that. We need to understand. So we have a two ways, right? Either we can understand the MCQs logically, right? Or the other thing is that we first do the lectures related to all CDA certification topics, like what is Amazon DynamoDB, what is Elastic Cache, what is CloudFront, what is ALB, right? And once we completed this series of these lectures, then we come to this MCQs, right? So we have two possibilities, right? But if we can do according to practical related to MCQs, then it's really, a time consuming process, right? Like in that case, we need to discuss, if we want to discuss about the Amazon DynamoDB, and if I want to create, like, give me an example, right? So for example, let me log in into
Are
my
the
account.
questions that are on the exam exactly the same from this from
Definitely.
this from this test bank? The questions appear exactly the same way? The
70 to
exact
80%, yes, 70 to 80% questions are exactly same.
with
Even the
same answer choices, everything same?
Yes, even the options are also the same, right?
Okay. So basically,
But
the how did you pass it? Did you memorize it?
no, I understand it. Yeah, and I understand it in the same thing, right? Like, because okay, let me tell you. So I gave you answer, the C is the most suitable, right? So how I judge it? Because I know the Amazon and DynamoDB is usually used for the transaction operator. If I reveal the solution, so here you can see that the correct answer is C, and most voted question is also C, right? So C is our correct answer, right? So I didn't memorize it because I am, I have a lot of work on AWS and I know what the service do, right? But it is also not possible for me to get knowledge all of these MCQs. So you can say the half of the questions I memorize it, and half of the question I know the full logic of it, right? Because if we have a 443 question, right? So we need to memorize. Some people are, do the certification by just, memorizing the things, right? So they memorize the 443 question and then goes to the exam, and they also pass it easily, right? Because,
Mhm.
all the test MCQs are comes from this, about 70 to 80%, right? And the
Mhm.
passing percentage to pass this exam is 70%, right? Or
Mm.
72%, sorry, yeah, 72%. So out of 100 percent, you have to score 72% to pass this certification, right? And you can easily pass it if you have a full understanding of this 443 question, or either you cram this 443 question. So you have a two option as well whatever you want, you can do it, right? But you can easily pass this certification if you memorize it, or if you know, understand this 443 question, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is one of the way. So currently what are I am trying to say is that, so we have a two-way, right? Either we can do spend the lectures on CDA services and then comes into our MCQs, or if we can directly comes into the MCQs, then we have only one way to understand it logically, right? That, let's suppose in this MCQs, I just told you, whenever some MCQs related to the transaction and related to something like a rollback, right? So you need to choose some best database for it. So DynamoDB is the best database, and also the DynamoDB with read and write operation is basically the best database for it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
why not the other option? Because in first option we have a read only operations, right? So we doesn't need a read operation, we also need a write operation. Why? Because once our transaction failed, we need to remove it from the database, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the other option like elastic and my meme cache, why it is not suitable? Because elastic cache or meme cache is only used for caches, right? To cache our data, to speed up the queries or speed up the process of the database, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't use for the transaction or rollback, right? And why not the fourth one? Because it's a SQL database. And why not for the even? Because Amazon Athena is not a database, right? It is a data service.
Mm.
So this is also a logic, right, in which you understand a high level overview of these services, right? So you
Mm-hmm.
just need to understand these services, high level overview of these services, so you can easily, understand it, and you will be easily remember it, right? If we can do these MCQs in this form. So the choice is your, uh, whatever the comfortable for you, we can do, right? So what do you think?
Okay. Um, yeah, we can just go through these questions, I guess, because I mean, learning all those databases and stuff like that, how long do you think that will take us?
So
Months,
let's
probably,
put
right?
this. Yeah, if we can discuss this only this MCQs databases, we need almost 6 to 7 lectures at least, right? And if we comes to the question two, then here you can see that how many services it uses, right? For example, one of the services is AWS S3, right? And the second one is AWS API. Two, and then we have a knowledge something like a monitoring, right? Because it says the HTTP response costs 500 error. 500 is basically error related to your server, right? So if there is any problem with your server, then it goes or it give us the 500 error, right? 5 access, right? So if we go and if we can go to the question number three, then how many services include in it, right? So
Yeah.
first service is Amazon S3 bucket. Second one is Amazon CloudFront distribution. And then if we come to the MCQs, so this is the CloudFront same. And the fourth one is Lambda Edge, right? And here's the lambda edge again. And so here you can see that in this MCQ we need to discuss the four services, right? And if you need to understand the CloudFront service, and if you want to do some practical on the CloudFront, then you also need to understand what is EC2, and what is the S3 bucket, and also what is the distribution. And if you want to learn some service, it has some prereqs, right? What does it mean by prereqs? Prereqs means you need to understand the some services first before understanding this service,
Mm.
right? So if we can do in this form, so we need to spend a lot of time to do practical in each of the service, right? So I am just giving you example. Let's suppose this is my AWS account, right? Let's suppose I want to create, DynamoDB, right? So here you can see a service with the name of DynamoDB, right? Which is no SQL data. And if I comes here And also you have to remember that the database services has a lot of cost on AWS, right? So whenever you create some database, it has some associated cost with it, right? So if I want to create a DynamoDB table, so you can easily create it by going to the tables and click on create tables, right? And you can
Yeah.
enter the some table name here, right? Let's suppose this is my test DB, and then you need to set the partition key. So do you know what is partition key and what is sort key?
Um,
So partition key is basically a part of primary key, we can say, or we can also say it a primary key. So primary key is basically the key that show us the uniqueness in the table, right?
right.
For example, if we have a three column, one is ID, second is name, and third is class. So what do you think in which of the columns show more uniqueness?
Say that one more time. I'm sorry. Say that one more time.
Let's
Ask me the question
suppose,
again.
okay, let's suppose I have three columns. One is ID, second is name, third is class, right? For example, this is the student data, right? In student data we have three columns. One is ID, student ID, second is student name, third is student class. So in these three columns, which one of the column is more unique?
ID.
Unique means uh, specifically the column that does not repeat its value, right? So
ID.
that
ID.
is,
ID.
yeah, definitely ID, right? So in that case, we made the ID a partition key, right? So partition key is basically part of primary key in your table, right? And if we can discuss about what is sort key, so sort key is your basically second. So in this, let's suppose now I have a table, right? Student table. Let's suppose now I have three columns, right? One
Mm-hmm.
is student name, second is student class, right? And third is, let's suppose, teacher name, right? Now I want to make a partition key. So how you can create it? Because there is no unique column here, right? So in that case, if it doesn't have some unique column, we combine two columns, right? To make more unique, right? So in that
Mm-hmm.
case, we are going to, combine the student name and class name with each other, right?
Mm-hmm.
So once it attach the first part of the primary key, let's suppose student name. So student name is basically our partition key. And the second part of the primary key, which is student class. So student class is basically our sort key, right? So the purpose of telling you is that if we spend the whole lecture in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So every database service, now here you can see the table setting different in it, right? And once you set all these things, you need to click on create table, right? And once you click on it, your table are going to be created. Like in that case, we have a four tables with the name of dev job, looks up, resume, right? And once you create the table, you can use this table in your code where you want to store your data, right?
Right.
So this is something like a database service, right? And if we can go with the Aurora and Elastic Cache, then definitely it spend a lot of time to discuss with it, right? So we have a two ways. Either we can, understand these services first, then we comes to the MCQ. So just let me know what are the most suitable for you, right? So in
I
that
I
case,
think I think
hmm,
you should let me handle the questions, like give me access to those questions and let me share my screen. Each
yeah,
of them,
sure,
me and
sure.
you will put in through ChatGPT and have it explain it to me
Okay.
like a complete beginner. And you
Okay,
give me some
sure.
additional explanations.
Yeah, okay,
And we will
okay.
ask ChatGPT to create diagrams and analogies and scenarios.
Right, right,
That
right.
way I can
Okay.
engage with this content and it's not so abstract. Right now,
Yeah.
it's like if I
Yeah,
was
I
teaching
know.
you chess theory right now, would you understand anything?
Yeah.
Like it's the same thing to me, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So I think you should give me that whatever link that is that you're going it through.
Okay,
Let me
okay.
share my
Okay,
screen
okay.
and let's take it
Okay.
through ChatGPT.
Definitely.
I'm
Okay,
sure it'll
let me
be able to
share.
give us some you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, let me share with you. Okay.
I think if we do that, right? If I conceptually understand some of those questions via
Yeah,
analogies and stuff like
definitely.
that, I believe that
Hmm.
I can memorize them if we just keep drilling through them over and over and over and over.
Definitely.
Because I passed
Definitely,
the
yeah.
Okta exam like that also.
Right. So, you
Memorize.
and then after that you have, so also the logical knowledge of these services and also, easily understand and memorize this type of the question.
Yep.
So let me, where is my Zoom? Where is my Zoom?
How difficult is this if you were to compare this to the CSSIP, for example? I think, yeah, CSSIP, right?
I don't think so. It's very difficult because we have only 4 for 3 question, and if we understand it and if we memorize this 4 for 3 question, we can easily pass our certification.
So the CSSIP is much harder, you're saying.
Uh, we can say, yeah, because the in AWS we have a 3 to 4 type of the certification. First one is practitioner, which is really really easy, right? And it has only MCQs in the form of single line, right? But here you can see in the CDA certification we have some scenario based question, right? So
So you don't think
CDA
that we
is
should go
the
for the practitioner one first?
we can go with the practitioner if you want. But it is very, very, easy one, and it has a little worth in the industry because most of the jobs requirement related to AWS or cloud engineer required some intermediate certification. So that's why I don't recommend you cloud practitioner. You can do it. It is good, but it has less worth than this.
Got it.
Yeah, so that's why if we want to spend some money on it, so we should do something that's benefit us, right? So
Right.
that's why I recommend you, right? We can do
But do you,
this. Yeah.
but do you
Hmm.
think it would be easier to do that one first and then to jump into this one, or do you think we can just jump straight into this thing and just tackle this at once? Like, do you
Uh,
think?
I think I think you can tackle it if we understand or memorize this all these questions.
Okay.
So let's
So let's
suppose you
make
can.
a
Oh,
project for it.
yeah. Let's make it.
Let's call it AWS. What is it called?
AWS Cloud Practitioner. Yeah, you can copy
This
this
right
one.
here, right?
No, no, you just need to copy AWS Certified Cloud Practitioner. Remove the, yeah, we can say, we can name it this all. Or we can name it AWS Certified Developer Associate exam. Yeah.
How many are on here?
Hmm.
Oh, this is just, oh, okay. It takes you to the next
This
page.
is, yeah, it goes to the next page. So,
Okay, listen. So I'm trying to get this certification basically. So if I give you this link, are you able to actually scrape this link and see all the questions? Like all 440 something questions that are in here? Can you see all of them by scraping this link, this URL? Okay. Okay, I'll give you each question one by one, but here is how we would like to proceed with this basically, Peter. So basically, the situation here is that I need to understand this, but I have no knowledge, no background, nothing at all when it comes to cloud or AWS or any of these kind of things, Beard. There's 443 something questions, and I have to basically memorize the answers to all these questions in order to pass this exam, as you know, Beard. Now, as you can imagine, just reading through these questions is not going to help me memorize because I need to actually engage with the content so I can commit it to memory. As you know, this kind of things from psychology about learning progressions and how we best learn by engaging with the content, period. And I don't really have the time to go into Amazon Web Services and look at every single one of these databases and services one by one in detail like that, period. So what I'm thinking is that I'm going to give you each question and you use scenarios, analogies, diagrams, images, whatever you can think of to help me understand these concepts in a way that is just as beginner friendly as possible while using all different types of analogies and different scenarios and all these different other ways that I can engage with this content besides just straight reading it, because it's just so abstract if I do it that way, period. Based on everything I've told you so far, what is your suggestion for how you can help me pass this exam in the next, let's just say 2 weeks or so, if I study every day for at least 2 hours, period? So how do you want to approach this? Can you tell me your plan, game plan for how you can help me pass this?
Good query.
Just as an example, I'm going to give you one of the questions. This is the first question, for example. I'll give you the set of first questions, all the questions on the first page, basically, so you can have a look. Because I think we need to engage, I think ChatGPT may be able to help us
Yeah.
by creating like some analogies for me.
Yeah.
1 second, Zain. My boss.
Oh, okay, okay.
I'll stop share for a second.
Okay.
Sorry, 1 second. I need to reschedule a meeting at work.
Mm-hmm.
1 second, Zain.
Yeah, okay.
Zain, 1 second. Where's
Yeah,
this
sure.
sound coming? Oh, 1 second.
Actually, someone in the meeting, name of Fuzzy.
Oh, hold on, let me mute that. Okay. I need to sorry, one second. My boss is texting me. One more second, then.
Yeah, sure.
Oh. Just FYI, I got another major project assigned at work, so we need to work on that too together next class.
Okay.
Okay, so okay. Let me share my screen again and continue.
Also there is another guy in the meeting with us whose name is Praveen.
Uh, that's my friend Zach. He is trying to learn some of these technical things. Zach, are you on the call? Anyway, I don't know. Maybe he's on the call, maybe he's not. Um, but he's just gonna watch, I guess.
Right,
Okay,
okay.
so we need to memorize answers, but also need to understand the concept so they stick since you don't
Mm,
have prior AWS knowledge. We'll use analogies,
right.
diagrams and images, stories and scenarios, making concepts more relatable, active recall and quizzing, daily reviews to solidify what I learned, study plan 2 weeks, 2 hours focused, cover 220 questions per day, 30 to 40 per day. Week 2, cover remaining 223 questions. Break it down, analogy, give a visual, explain. Okay.
Yeah, we will try when we cover the 100 of the question. I will try to make some quiz for you, right?
Right.
So we can, easily
Okay.
examine it either we are going to the same path. Okay.
So let's go through this one and then let me see if I understand those explanations and then you can help me understand.
Okay, okay.
So gaming website lets users trade game items. Both user records must be updated in one transaction. Any update fails, the whole web transaction must roll back. Which AWS provides this? It's actually selecting 2 answers. Is that correct?
No, it is not correct.
Okay.
Only the C1 is correct. Actually, he note down the most suitable option, but we need to write, 100% correct option, right? Which is DynamoDB.
Okay, listen, first of all, you're not even correct in your answer, Beard. The only correct answer here is C. So please go ahead and explain to me accordingly now. Player A gives item X to player B. Player B gives item Y to player A.
So
Both
it is
updates,
something like a trading.
right, must
Mm,
succeed together. Otherwise, the transaction must roll back, which is basically undo everything.
mm.
So basically, if it doesn't succeed together, then it's gonna basically undo this transaction
Yeah,
happen between those two
yeah,
players.
both transaction. If one of the transaction is failed, then both of the transaction are going to be failed, right?
Okay. This means you'll need
Mm.
a database that supports transactions, ensuring either all actions happen or none at all.
Yes, this one. Either all the action are going to be happen or either none of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Same in our bank case. Either if we do a transaction of 1000, then it must come with the 1000, right? If it comes with the 500 and 200, that definitely it is not correct, right? So in that case we need to do a rollback, right? Means all of the money goes rollback and it automatically detects this type of the transaction and get rid of from the backend, right?
Mm-hmm.
So either all the transaction are going to be correct or either none of them.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
This is also basically, a database accuracy, we can say, or database six pillars rules, right? In which
Mm-hmm.
we have some of the part like atomicity, right? Or so this is the one of the part of it, right? Either all the transaction are going to be correct or either none of them, right?
Right. Makes sense.
Yeah, here I'm talking about this like acid property. Acid has four things: atomicity, consistency, isolation and durability, right? So this type of the scenarios related to the database AC transaction. What does it mean by AC transaction? So basically in AC transaction we have four things. So every transaction has atomicity, means every record is different from the other, right? And consistency, isolation means it does not depend to the other transaction. Like if one user do the two transaction, right, then these two transactions are basically isolated, right, means not dependent to each other, right?
Mm-hmm.
And durability means that the long term it must be safe in database and it will be deleted uh when the time duration is completed or something like that, right? And
Mm-hmm.
this part is related to the atomicity that we are currently discussing. Either all the transaction are going to be passed or either if one of the fail, then whole the transaction are going to be failed, right?
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
So it says DynamoDB support this type of the transaction, AC transaction, right? Means DynamoDB provides the atomicity, consistency, isolation, and durability. So this is the same thing which I tell you earlier, as the consistent read is only for reading the data or most up to data or get the data, and last cache is used for only for caching, like getting the data in a very efficient way, or we can say frequent way, right? And Amazon Aurora is a SQL database that is basically relational database. That means the data is stored in the form of tables, right? And whenever we store the data in the form of table, then it does not have a this type of the property like acid properties,
Mm-hmm.
atomicity, consistency, this type of the thing. So that's why we skip this, right?
Right.
So yeah.
Makes sense. Okay.
And the last service,
Think
Athena.
of okay, wait, hold on. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so the last one is not fun because Athena is not a database, right? So it is a
Mm,
data service which is used for query or providing the result of the queries, right? So that's why it's totally skipped.
okay.
So I think if we can go in that particular logic or in this space, then I think we can easily remember it and we can easily pass it. I think so.
Yeah, okay. So how to remember this? Think of a Pokemon card trade in a game. The both trades go through its success. If one fails, the entire trade is canceled. This is exactly what DynamoDB transact written items does, all or nothing. So whenever you see a multi-step transaction needing rollback, think DynamoDB transact. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So anytime a transaction where multiple, interactions are happening, multiple
Right.
steps are happening, if one of the steps fails, it needs to cancel the entire thing.
Yes.
That's when we're using Dynamo database.
Yes.
Like
Dynamo
ATM
database and
transaction
yeah.
or like
Yeah.
a Pokemon trade between two
Yeah.
Game Boys.
Hmm.
It could be like let me think of another example.
And also, we can take an example of Binance P2P trading, right? People to people trading. Let's suppose if some of the person send money to the other person, but
Right.
the second person doesn't give the first person money, then we can do a rollback. Means the first person money should be back to him, right? If one of the person does not send the money, right? So we
Right.
can say the P2P is also this part, right? So whenever this type of the scenario comes, you need to select DynamoDB and specifically which operation, transaction write operation, right?
Right. Makes sense. Okay. Okay, so I understand that one. Let's move on.
Yeah.
These are all the right answers, right?
Yeah, definitely. So we are going to just check the correct answer here. Most voted on, right? So most
Okay,
voted
most
answer.
voted is the correct answer, obviously. So go ahead and explain this one to me also and use as many analogies as you can. And remember, I'm a complete beginner, so the more analogies and more ways you can paint pictures for me, the better I'm going to understand and remember this. And keep in mind that I'm a business analyst currently working for LL Bean, as you know. So if you can draw the analogies back to my company, that works also. And remember, I play chess and those kind of things. So basically whatever analogies you think would be the most practical analogies to use to tie it back to something that I'm familiar with, or to use something that I could definitely remember in the future. that would be the best because it's very abstract for me. So I need you to make it very concrete for me by using analogies, breaking it down like a beginner, those kind of things, and painting different types of pictures and scenarios so I can really engage with the content the most. Ugh. A developer built a Java app that talks to AWS services. Okay, let me read that last one again one more time. Is this the exact question that it's giving me?
No, no, this is the second question. Yeah. Yeah, it gives you correct, but it actually try to understand you the whole question, right? What the question is.
Okay, I need you to post the entire question exactly as it is and post and present all the answers exactly as they are on the beginning also. Do not change anything, do not summarize, none of that kind of bullshit, period. I need to memorize it, so you need to give me the question exactly as it is. And the answer choice is exactly as it is as well, period. So based on this, go ahead and respond to me again accordingly.
Mm.
Developer created a Java application that makes HTTP requests directly to AWS services.
So I think the Rafi, the previous response is I think the good, right? How? Because it tell us what the question is, right? So you can once you understand the scenario, what the question, then you can read the actual question, right? And once you read the question, you can easily understand it, right? So if you jump into the direct to the question, then maybe it's difficult for you, right? So here you can see this situation. So basically it he try to understand you the situation, what the question is about, right? So once you this understand the situation, then we read the question, and once we understand the question, then we go to the answer, right? So I think that's the best way to do this.
Okay, here's how I would like for you to take me through each of these, Beard. Basically, the first thing I would like you to do is once I give you the question, you need to basically give me that scenario and break it down for me first and explain what the question is, comma, and then I would like for you to give me the exact question exactly as it is and give me the exact answers as they are. And then I would like for you to explain and do your explanations and those kind of things, Beard. So first, you explain to me the question, just like you did previously, comma, then I would like for you to post the question and the answers exactly as they are, comma, and then I would like to give give me your explanation. A developer created a Java application that sends HTTP requests to AWS services. The
So
problem is that the app sometimes gets 5 times more errors, which means AWS is failing to respond at times.
okay, let me tell you. So we can consider a scenario, right, in which we have a application, right? Any type of the application, either it is a game or either it is a we can say social application, any type of the application, right? That built on Java, right? Means Java is a programming language, right? So once we created the application on Java, right? and then we deploy our application on AWS, right? What does it mean by deployment? Deployment means once we completed the code, we deploy the our code into some AWS service like EC2 or something like that, right? Now our application is live on AWS services, right? Means we can expose or we can assess our services by using some AWS services, right? And every service that expose on the internet, they have two ways, either HTTP or the second one is HTTPS, right? So whenever you open some applications, either they will open through HTTP or either they will open HTTPS. And the big difference between them is that HTTPS is more secure because the certificate is attached with it, right? And HTTP is less secure, right? So let's suppose this is your application and you deploy into the AWS, right? And now your application is exposed on internet through HTTP, right? HTTP means it is exposed on internet or it is available on browser, right? You can search it. We can take an example of Rafi Chaudhary, right? So let's put Rafi Chaudhary is developed through Java, right? And we deploy the Rafi Chaudhary website in AWS instead of using some third party service like GoDaddy, right? So instead of using GoDaddy for hosting and WordPress, we develop Rafi Chaudhary on Java and deploy on AWS, right? And we are now able to access the Rafi Chaudhary website through HTTP, right? So this is the
Mm-hmm.
one line. Now the problem is that when we are trying to access the Rafi Chaudhary website, we got an error with the name of 5xx. 5xx means 502, 503. So this is the error. 5xx means any type of the error related to 5 series. So 5 series is basically the error that relate to your server. What does it mean by server? So server is basically the place where your application or where your website is actually deployed, right? So if
Yep.
if it if in server has some issues, then it goes or then it comes the 5 something like that, like 502 bad gateway, 503 something like that, sir, right? So
Mm-hmm.
let's suppose Rafi Chaudhary website is hosting currently in GoDaddy or in WordPress, right? So let's
Mm-hmm.
suppose if WordPress has some issue or GoDaddy hosting has some issues, right? So if it has issue, then your website gives you a 5 something like that, right?
Right.
So which means AWS is failing to respond at, and that means there is an issue with our backend, right? So if the
Mm-hmm.
Rafi Chaudhary is deployed on GoDaddy, then issue is with GoDaddy. So if the Rafi Chaudhary website is deployed on AWS, that means the issue is from AWS, right? So in
Mm-hmm.
AWS specifically, in which service where you deploy the application, and usually we deploy our application into some server like EC2 install or something like that, right? So this is
Yep.
our current problem. We getting the 5 something like error. Okay.
Right.
And this problem is actually impact us because if the Rafi Chaudhary website are going to be down and it gives the user 5 something error, that means it gives a user bad experience, right? Because your
Yep.
website are crashing, random failure, and that's really bad for business, right? And third is goal. The development needs to make the application more resilient, right? Meaning the
Mhm.
app should be able to handle this failure better instead of just breaking. So if this type of the error comes, then your website must be more resilient. More resilient means it should be handle this error more efficient, right? And doesn't give us this error. Now it will match this scenario with your actual project LLB. So you can read it.
Okay. So
Now you can read the question and tell me, do you understand the question now?
developer created a Java application that makes HTTP requests directly to AWS services. Application log. Looking shows 5xx errors, HTTP response codes that occur at irregular intervals. The errors are affecting users. How should the developer update the application to improve the application's resiliency? Let me see.
So basically, the question is how we can improve our application resiliency. Application resiliency means we should improve our website in the form if this type of the error comes, then we can handle it efficiently, right? In which our application are not going to be down, right? In that case, application are more confident or more be encourageful that it handles this type of the error by its own, right? So what is the best suitable service you can use for it, right? The first option is revise the request content in application code, use the AWS code, right? So just go down and now discuss about the answers, right?
Okay. AWS SDK Smart Assistant for handling failures. Instead of manually coding how to send and retry requests, AWS SDK for Java automatically handles retries, errors, and failures.
Okay, let me tell you. So currently your application is deployed with AWS, right? Now we need some service that is basically used for the AWS deployment, right? And that help us the facility if our application are going to be down for some reason, then it automatically retry or refresh or sending request in our application, right? So for this, we need to use the AWS SDK service, right? That provide us the facility, to handle the retries, errors, and failures, right?
Mhm.
So you just need to memorize whenever we need to, handle the error of five, something like that, and retries the request so we can use the AWS SDK for it, right?
Mhm.
And you
Smart
can read here.
Assistant handling
Mm,
failures.
mm.
Okay. SDK for Java automatically handles entries, errors, and failures. Automatic retries. If AWS fails to respond, the SDK automatically tries again instead of breaking. Backup strategy. If a request keeps failing, the SDK waits a bit before retrying so it doesn't overload AWS. Timeout management. The SDK prevents the app from waiting forever if AWS is unresponsive.
So basically, the server type of error are easily managed by SDK, right? So
Right.
you can remember these things. Now we associate this answer with your chess and LL.
Okay. Oh,
So you can compare this with this, right? Let's suppose you playing the chess, right? And you manually calculate the some type of the thing, so more chances of doing the mistake. So
Mhm.
whenever the things you doing manually had more chances to do mistake, right? And whenever you do something automatic things, then the less chances of doing mistake.
Mhm. Okay, so basically the AWS SDK is just some type of application that just basically whenever there's a connection failure, it just kind of tries the connection again and again to to
Okay,
establish a connection without overwhelming the AWS service.
mm, definitely. So the pure use of AWS SDK is that AWS SDK is basically software development kit that is basically used to interact with AWS, right?
Mm-hmm.
Means we can use the AWS SDK to interact with different AWS services, right? And
Mm-hmm.
we can code these services by using the AWS SDK, right? Something like this type of the function, right?
Mm-hmm.
So AWS SDK has a one main function that it handle the request or it retry the request if your application got some error, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's why we are going towards the AWS. So now we have a wrong options, right? First, revise the request content in application. So this is not basically our issue, right? Because our basically error is 5xx. 5xx error is basically for the server, right?
Right.
So in that case, if we are going to refresh the page and revise the request content, it doesn't help us to solve our error. So that's why we are going to skip this option. Changing the request means, let's suppose you accessing a website in your one browser, and now you are trying to access your website through some postman or maybe using some commands like curl, right? Something like that. So it doesn't help you, right?
Yeah.
Now, why not the C one? So C option is scale out the application so that have more instance of application run. So let's suppose I have a 50 error. So 50 error means there is some issue with our server, right? Now in this MCQs he says you need to create a more server to handle this error. So this is not correct because we create a more server to handle more traffic, right? Not for the error. So currently we have an error on the server, right? Not a traffic issue. If we have a traffic issue like in rafichaudhary.com, we have a lot of user, maybe millions of user, right? So in that case, we are going to go with the scaling the instance. Scaling the instance means creating the more instances and divide your traffic into the different instances to handle the load efficient, right?
Mm-hmm.
But currently our application is showing the 50 error means there is some issue with our server, right? So if there is an issue with our server, then how scaling the server resolve this problem? Definitely not. So we need to fix the issue of the server instead of scaling the instance, scaling the server, right?
Mm-hmm.
And D is adding additional logging. So he says you can attach some extra monitoring tools with your application so you can see the logs of your application, what happened with your application. But in that case we can easily actually see the error, what the error is actually comes, right? But it does not resolve our error, right? We need to
Mm-hmm.
fix our error, and to fix our error we need to use the AWS SDK, right? So
Mm-hmm.
this option is basically used for only monitoring and only see the error, but it does not fix our problem. Now you can go.
Right. A global company has a mobile app that serves static data, files, videos, and documents. Hold on one second.
Hmm.
Oh, okay. So a global company has a mobile app
Hmm.
that serves static data
Hmm.
like files, images, video
Okay,
documents.
let me tell you. So what does it mean by, so we have a two type of the website, right? One is static and one is dynamic, right? So in static website we have only, images, video, or some documents, right? We can take an example of e-commerce, right? So e-commerce is basically dynamic website where we click something, then the show page is open, and after show page, payment page, and then other page, right? So this is the dynamic one, right? Rafi Chaudhary, we can say some of the pages are Rafi Chaudhary's are static, and some of the pages are dynamic. Let's suppose the pricing page of your website is the dynamic one, right? But the home page of your website, we can say the static one, right? Which means in static page we only have images, videos, or some documents, right? And to storing these images, videos, and document, we can use the one of the service of AWS, which is S, right? So AWS S3 is basically storage service that help us the facilities to store our static content. What does it mean by static content? Static content mean images, videos, and document. So static content means the content which is not change immediately, right? Let's suppose I put some image in Rafi Chaudhary website, then it does not change immediately, means time by time, right? Any time, right? So maybe it change after 1 year, after half of an year, right? So this type of the website or this type of the content, we can see the static content. And to store the some static content, we can use the one of the AWS service, which is Amazon S3, right? Now, the second thing he is talking about the CloudFront. So CloudFront is also an AWS service that provide us the facility of edge location, right? And what does it mean by edge location? So give me an example.
What?
Uh,
What is the word that you're saying?
edge location. So what does it mean by edge location? We can say,
Where, hold on. Where does it say
let
that on here? I don't,
so this first line, CloudFront.
edge location.
So I am trying to give you overview of CloudFront. So CloudFront is basically used for edge location. So I am telling you the concept of CloudFront.
Edge
What is cloud?
location?
Yes,
That word?
yes, this word, edge location.
Okay.
Okay, let me tell you. So for example, I have an application, right, that serves my content all or maybe 3 to 4 countries. For example, USA, Australia, Canada, and India, right? These four countries are basically my application are in running state, right? Now, let's suppose I deploy my application in USA region, right? If you remember in AWS we have a regions, right? And in regions we have multiple services and we use the multiple services to deploy our application, right? Let's suppose I deploy my application in USA, right? So for the USA users, my application will be running so fast. Means why? Because they have a very less distance from the server, right? But what about the user who is sitting in the India? So there are more contradict or more, difference between the distance between the India and USA. And your application is running on USA, right? But you also have a user in India, right? So this type of the issues are handled by using one of the service which is CloudFront, right? So
Mm.
basically CloudFront makes some edge locations in different data centers of Amazon, right? And what is it? What is the help of the edge location? So basically, whenever the some user from the India are trying to access our website, then our website static content is already cached in this edge location and they serve the content from the edge location to this particular user, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
this is basically used to speed up the user experience to gain or get the static data of our website in a very immediate way.
Okay. So, okay, let
Now
me.
you can read it again. Yeah.
A global company has a mobile app that serves static data like files, images, videos, documents from an Amazon S3 bucket in US East 1.
Yes. US is one is America region, right? Let's
Yep.
suppose he says a global company has mobile app that have only static content, means only have images, video, and document. And this static content are basically saved in S3 bucket, and S3 bucket is hosted or running on USA region, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now you can read that CloudFront is already be used to distribute this content. So basically, your content is saved in S3, and in front of the S3, you attach a CloudFront to distribute your content to the different user, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's suppose if your user come from the USA, then CloudFront distribute this content to the USA person. If the
Mm-hmm.
user comes from India, then CloudFront serve this content that is located in S3 to India person, right?
Yeah. Ah. Okay.
Now read the second line. The company is expanding to South Africa, where the data must reside in. So in that scenario, our application is currently running in US East 1 region. US East 1 region basically USA region, right?
Yeah.
And in USA region, we have attached a cloud front with it, right? Which actually served our content to the USA person, right?
Right.
Now the company also want to serve their content or serve their application to South Africa as well, right?
Right.
And to serve your content to the South Africans, you should have to, have an application in that region too, right? So now they have scenario they don't want to create a separate mobile app for South African peoples, right? Because it takes lot of cost if they deploy again their application in some different region, right? So now they want what they want only to serve same type of the content but in different region. We can take an example of Facebook, right? So Facebook application, let's suppose Facebook application is deployed on in AWS USA region, right? Or in USA region, right? But Facebook users are spread all over the world, right? Even the Pakistani people access the Facebook, Indian persons access the website, Facebook, right? So what the Facebook is doing, instead of deploying their Facebook application in different regions, they only deploy their application in one region, which is USA region, and they only serve their content into the different locations by using the CloudFront. Simple as that, right?
Yeah. Yep. They don't want to create several mobile app. The goal is to serve the same content from the SW bucket in South Africa without changing the app. Think of this like LL Bean opening a warehouse in South Africa to serve local customers faster without changing their website. Question. A global company has a mobile app with static data stored in AWS S3 bucket in the US East 1 region. The company serves the content through an Amazon CloudFront distribution. The company is launching the mobile app in South Africa. The data must reside in the South Africa region. Company doesn't want to deploy a specific mobile client for South Africa. What should the company do to meet these requirements? Create a Lambda edge function. Associate the Lambda edge function as an origin request trigger with the CloudFront distribution to change the S3 origin region.
So the first option is incorrect. Why? Because he says use the CloudFront geographic restriction feature to block access to the South Africa. So what the question is? The question is we have to serve our mobile app to the South Africa, not to block the other, right? So the first option is incorrect 100%. Why? Because it is talking about blocking the access, not a giving access, right?
Hmm.
And second is lambda h function. So basically lambda h function is basically facilitate to serve the content to the different countries who is located on different places by using the CloudFront edge location, right? So this is the one of the function we can use to serve our content into the different countries. And D1 is also fully incorrect. Why? Because he's talking about create a domain on Singapore region, or sorry, in South Africa region, and attach with your application. So that's not correct, right? So this is the same. Let's suppose we have a Rafi Chaudhary website, right? And to serve the content or to the South Africa, we also created another domain, right? And we deploy just attach this domain also with the Rafi Choudhury. So it doesn't help you to access your website from the different location, right? So because our application is deployed into some servers, right, not on a domain. So CNAME or domain is basically only used as the addresses, right? Means this is the address of our website, right? So it doesn't help you to serve your content from different location.
Yeah.
Now you can read this. Why is B correct?
Lambda Edge is the AWS service that lets you run code at the CloudFront edge locations closer to users.
Yes. So let's suppose if we have a user from 4 countries, then Lambda H, what are going to do? They are going to run our application according to the nearest region, right? For example, if some user comes from India, then it going to be run our code from Indian region. If some user comes from South Africa, then it going to be run our code to the South Africa region, right? So that's why we are going to use this service instead of deploying our service again and again in different regions.
Right. And they have servers set up in each of these regions, right? Amazon does.
No, you don't need to setting up the different different server on different region. That's why we're using the CloudFront. Because in the question he says, we don't the user the customer don't want to deploy their application in different region. What does it mean by deploying? So deploying means in every region we have a service. No, the customer doesn't want to deploy their servers on every region, because it costs you too much, right? So that's why they are looking up for some way to where we have only deployment of our application in only one region, and we can easily, or we can do efficiently serve our content to the different location by using the same deployment location, right? So that's why we're using the Lambda Edge service, which basically help us or facilitate us to serve our content, which is currently placed in USA region, to the multiple locations, right? From India, from South Africa, anywhere, right? So in
Mm.
that case, we didn't want, or we don't want to create a multiple server on different region for it, right? So we only have a one server in which our application are actually running, right? And we can attach a Lambda Edge with the front of our application, and Lambda Edge are going to be serve this traffic into the different regions.
Okay, so when it serves the traffic in different regions,
Hmm.
how does it like
Mhm.
hmm,
Yeah.
try to figure out
How?
what
Yeah, please.
never mind. I don't think I understand. I have a question, honestly. I was trying to figure out what does Amazon have in those regions that lets them communicate, that
Okay.
that lets that
Hmm.
traffic communicate with Amazon.
Okay, so basically, when you create your application in one of the Amazon region, right? And Amazon has their data centers on different location. Like we can say Amazon has data centers on India, South Africa, Singapore, right? So anywhere all over the world, right? So once you deploy your application in one of the region of AWS, so Amazon has a capability to serve your content on the different places by using this service. So Lambda provide you this service, AWS Lambda Edge service, right? Which
Right,
help
but
us the
that's what
facility
I
to
was saying
serve
is that
our con.
Amazon, in order to do that, in order
Hmm.
to send, send the content to different places, Amazon had to have set up
Hmm.
a server in all those places. Like it has a server,
Yeah,
a
yeah,
data center, whatever you
definitely,
want to call it, located in South Africa and East Coast,
definitely.
say, correct?
Definitely correct. Yes, because every region has different availability zone. Availability zone with data center. Simple as that.
Right,
Hmm. So they have different data centers. So in the backend, they actually use the data center for it, right?
right. Okay.
Hmm.
Ugh. What should the company do to meet these requirements? Create a Lambda Edge function associated Lambda Edge function of the region or as an origin request trigger with the CloudFront distribution to change the S3 origin region. Company wants to serve the same content from different S3 buckets based on location. Lambda Edge is an AWS service that lets you run code at CloudFront Edge locations. What the? An origin request trigger means before CloudFront fetches content from S3 bucket, the function can change the origin region to Africa South 1 if it's the user is in South Africa.
Right? Instead of manually deploying a new mobile app in different region. Just use the Lambda edge to serve your content into the different region. Simple as that.
This way, South African users get content from South Africa 1, others get content from US Coast 1 without needing a new mobile app. Analogy, order fulfillment. Imagine LL Bean has two warehouses, one in New York and one in Cape Town. If a customer orders from the US, the system automatically routes the order to the New York warehouse. If they order from South Africa, it goes automatically to the South Africa warehouse without needing the customer to change anything. That's exactly what Lambda Edge is doing, rendering requests from the right region based on the user location.
Yeah.
Okay. Why would we block access, right?
So definitely the option is totally incorrect. Why? Because he says the block the access from South Africa. We don't want to block the access from South Africa. Instead, our case is totally different. We want to give access to the South Africa, right? So
Right.
option one is totally wrong, right?
Create
And
Lambda
in
Edge function, associate the Lambda Edge function as a viewer response trigger with the CloudFront distribution to change the S3 origin region.
So in that we have a difference, right? So you have to remember, complete cycle. So first of all, we have a S3 bucket, right? And S3 bucket, we have attached a CloudFront, right? And after the CloudFront, we have a Lambda Edge, right? Which actually serve the content, right? Now he says associate the Lambda Edge function as a view response trigger with CloudFront distribution. No, basically a view response trigger runs after a CloudFront has already fetched the content. But we
Mhm.
need to change the request before the CloudFront retries it, not after. So basically Lambda Edge is the first thing, right?
Yeah. Okay.
And D1 is totally correct. So he says use another domain for it. Domain is not created for the purpose of, uh, serve the content in different location. Domain is only used for our name, website name, right? Okay, did you read it?
Lambda Edge origin request warehouse selector. Decide which warehouse S3 bucket to pull from before shipping fetching data. Okay, your response is too late. Trying to change the warehouse after the package has already been sent. It's too late. Okay, I got it.
Okay, so let's wrap up the lecture, Rafi. It's about 3 to 3:07 a.m. right now.
Okay.
So we can start it from the tomorrow from this and we can try to do more fast, right?
Yeah.
And the second thing is, did you see the website? Abu Bakr made some changes on it, right? So we will try to discuss these changes in tomorrow, right?